Silence can change how you think, act, and lead. Imagine sitting in a room where your breathing slows and your thoughts clear. You can feel your shoulders drop, hear small shifts in the air, and notice details you usually miss. This audiobook will teach you simple habits that create that calm on purpose. You will learn how pausing before you speak helps you make better choices, how listening first strengthens your influence, and how fewer words protect your time and energy. I'll walk you through practical steps you can use today, starting with short daily routines and moving to how silence shapes tough conversations and leadership decisions. Expect clear examples, short exercises, and real moments where quiet made a difference. Stay with this audio if you want tools to stay focused, speak with more impact, and handle pressure without losing yourself. By the end, silence won't be empty, it will be one of your strongest skills. Chapter 20. Practice intentional silence to think clearly before acting. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness or absence or hesitation, but in truth it is a deliberate act of strength and control and awareness. When a person chooses silence on purpose, something powerful happens inside the mind. Noise slows down, reactions soften, thoughts begin to line up instead of colliding. In that quiet space, clarity has room to appear. This chapter is about learning to practice intentional silence so thinking becomes clean before action begins. It is about learning to pause not because of fear, but because of discipline. Many problems in life are not caused by lack of intelligence or lack of effort, but by rushed responses made in noisy minds. Strategic silence corrects that pattern at its root. Most people move through their days reacting instead of choosing. A message arrives and they reply instantly. A comment is made and they respond emotionally. A problem appears and they rush into action without understanding it fully. This constant movement creates a sense of being busy but not effective. Intentional silence interrupts that cycle. It creates a moment where the mind steps back and observes instead of attacks or defends. In that moment, the brain shifts from impulse to reason. This shift is small but life-changing. Stoic thinkers understood this deeply. They believed that the space between an event and a response is where freedom lies. When silence fills that space instead of emotion, the response becomes wiser. Silence is not about avoiding action. It is about choosing the right action instead of the loudest one. When practiced daily, it becomes a form of mental training. Over time, the mind becomes calmer under pressure and clearer under uncertainty. Intentional silence begins with awareness. Awareness of how often words are used to release tension instead of solve problems. Awareness of how quickly opinions are shared without full understanding. Awareness of how often actions are taken to escape discomfort rather than create progress. This awareness is uncomfortable at first. It reveals habits that have gone unnoticed, but discomfort is the price of growth and silence gives the courage to face it. A practical way to begin is by slowing down responses in everyday moments. When someone speaks, do not prepare an answer while they are still talking. Simply listen and allow their words to settle before deciding what matters. When a message arrives, do not open it immediately if emotions are high. Give the mind time to settle before reading and responding. When a decision appears, pause for a few breaths before acting. These small pauses are not dramatic, but they train the brain to value clarity over speed. Silence also reveals the difference between urgency and importance. Many things feel urgent, but few are truly important. Urgent things demand immediate reaction and create stress. Important things require thought and planning and patience. Silence separates these two. When the mind is quiet, it can ask simple questions. Does this require action now, or can it wait? Will this matter tomorrow or next year? Is this response driven by fear or by values? These questions rarely appear in noisy minds. Another aspect of intentional silence is learning to observe inner dialogue. The mind constantly speaks even when the mouth is quiet. This internal noise often pushes toward quick reactions. It exaggerates threats and rushes conclusions. Intentional silence includes learning to notice these thoughts without obeying them immediately. When anger arises, the mind may demand expression. Silence allows anger to be seen clearly without becoming action. When excitement appears, silence prevents reckless decisions. When fear shows up, silence keeps it from controlling behavior. Practicing this does not mean suppressing emotions. Suppression creates tension and resentment. The goal is to feel emotions fully without letting them decide actions. Silence gives emotions time to pass through without spilling outward. This is one of the strongest forms of self-mastery. It builds respect for oneself and from others. People trust those who act with calm intention more than those who react loudly. Real-world application of this principle can be seen in conflict situations. During disagreement, most people focus on winning or defending. Words become weapons. Silence changes the dynamic completely. When one person remains calm and quiet, the emotional charge drops. The other person feels heard rather than attacked. Solutions become possible. Even when agreement is not reached, respect is preserved. Silence becomes a form of leadership in these moments. At work, intentional silence improves judgment. Meetings often reward those who speak first or loudest, but the most valuable insights often come from those who observe quietly and speak when clarity is high. By waiting and listening, patterns become visible. Hidden details emerge. When words are finally used, they carry weight. This builds credibility over time. Silence becomes a tool for influence rather than absence. In personal decisions, silence is equally powerful. Many life choices are made under pressure from others or from internal noise. Career moves, relationships, financial choices all benefit from quiet reflection. Taking time alone without distractions allows values to surface. It becomes easier to see what aligns with long-term goals and what only satisfies short-term comfort. Silence helps separate desire from need. Daily practice strengthens this ability. Setting aside time each day without external input trains the mind to be comfortable with stillness. No phone, no music, no conversation, just sitting or walking or breathing quietly. At first the mind resists, thoughts race, boredom appears. This is normal. With consistency the noise reduces, focus improves, decision-making sharpens. This daily silence becomes a mental reset. Another practical step is reducing unnecessary speech. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every opinion needs expression. Asking whether words will help or harm or add clarity before speaking becomes a powerful habit. This does not mean becoming passive, it means becoming precise. Precision increases impact. Over time, people notice the difference. When you speak, they listen. Intentional silence also protects energy. Constant talking and reacting drains mental strength. Silence conserves it. This energy can then be directed toward meaningful action and growth. Many people feel exhausted not because of hard work, but because of constant mental noise. Silence reduces this fatigue. There will be moments when silence feels risky. Silence may feel like missed opportunity or loss of control. But most losses come from poor decisions, not from patience. Trust grows when actions are thoughtful. Confidence grows when reactions are controlled. Silence builds both quietly and steadily. The practice of silence also deepens self-knowledge. In quiet moments, truths appear that are hidden by distraction. Personal patterns become clear. Strengths and weaknesses reveal themselves honestly. This knowledge is the foundation of improvement. Without it, change becomes guesswork. When mistakes happen, silence helps respond wisely. Instead of defensiveness, there is reflection. Instead of blame, there is learning. This response builds resilience. Life becomes less about avoiding failure and more about using it constructively. Intentional silence is not withdrawal from life. It is engagement with life from a place of clarity. It allows actions to be guided by purpose rather than impulse. Over time, it reshapes character. Calm becomes natural. Focus becomes stronger. Decisions become cleaner. To integrate this into daily life, start small and remain consistent. Pause before responding, breathe before acting, observe before speaking, create daily quiet time, reduce unnecessary noise. These practices compound. Weeks turn into months. The mind becomes a steadier place to live. The world will always be loud. Opinions will always compete. Pressure will always exist. Silence becomes a personal refuge and a strategic advantage. It allows thinking that is independent and strong. It creates space for wisdom to operate. This chapter invites commitment to that practice, not as a temporary tactic, but as a way of being. Silence practiced with intention becomes a form of respect for oneself and for others. It turns reaction into response and confusion into clarity. By choosing silence before action, you choose to lead your life rather than chase it. You choose control over chaos. You choose progress over regret. This is the foundation upon which all other growth is built. Chapter 2. Listen deeply to understand others before sharing opinions. Listening deeply is one of the rarest skills in modern life, yet it is one of the most powerful tools for understanding people, reducing conflict, and making wiser choices. Most people believe they are listening, but in reality they are waiting for their turn to speak. Their attention is divided between the words they hear and the response they are already forming. This habit creates misunderstanding, weak relationships, and poor judgment. Deep listening is different. It is an active discipline that requires patience, restraint, and humility. It asks you to value understanding more than being understood. When you listen deeply, you are not collecting words to argue against. You are observing tone, emotion, pauses, and intention. You are noticing what is said and what is avoided. This level of attention changes the quality of interaction immediately. People feel respected when they are truly heard. They relax. They reveal more. Truth surfaces naturally without pressure. This is not manipulation. It is clarity. From a Stoic perspective, deep listening is a form of self-mastery. It requires control over ego. The urge to interrupt often comes from the need to prove intelligence or defend identity. Silence while listening weakens that urge. It reminds the mind that learning comes before judgment. Every person knows something you do not. Listening deeply allows access to that knowledge. In daily life, opinions are shared quickly and often carelessly. Many are shaped by emotion, incomplete information, or social pressure. When you listen first, you protect yourself from reacting to partial truths. You give your mind time to absorb context. This prevents unnecessary conflict and regret. Words once spoken cannot be retrieved. Listening delays speech until it has value. A practical way to train deep listening is to focus fully on the speaker without planning your reply. When thoughts about your response appear, gently return attention to their words. Notice how often the mind drifts. This practice reveals how conditioned the brain is to prioritize self-expression over understanding. With repetition, attention becomes steadier. Another important aspect is resisting the urge to fix or correct immediately. Many conversations are not requests for solutions. They are expressions of experience. Interrupting with advice can feel dismissive even when intentions are good. Listening without trying to fix builds trust. Once trust is established, advice is welcomed instead of resisted. Deep listening also involves accepting discomfort. Sometimes you will hear views that challenge your beliefs. The natural reaction is to defend or argue. Silence during these moments creates space for reflection. Ask whether disagreement requires immediate expression. Often it does not. Understanding the reasoning behind a belief is more valuable than winning an argument. In professional environments, deep listening improves effectiveness. When colleagues or clients speak, they often reveal priorities and concerns indirectly. A distracted listener misses these signals. A focused listener gains insight that shapes better decisions. Speaking after understanding demonstrates competence and maturity. It reduces errors and builds respect. In personal relationships, listening deeply strengthens connection. Many conflicts persist not because of lack of solutions, but because of lack of understanding. When people feel unheard, they repeat themselves louder or withdraw completely. Listening with attention and patience dissolves much of this tension. It shows care through action rather than words. Listening deeply does not mean agreeing with everything. It means allowing space for others to express without interruption or dismissal. Agreement can come later if appropriate. Disagreement, expressed after understanding, is calmer and more constructive. A daily practice to improve this skill is setting an intention before conversations. Remind yourself that the goal is understanding, not performance. During the conversation, maintain eye contact and relaxed posture. Avoid checking devices. These signals show presence and encourage openness. Another practice is summarizing what you heard before responding. This ensures clarity and shows respect. It also slows the pace of conversation, reducing emotional escalation. This habit alone can transform difficult discussions. Listening deeply also improves self-awareness. When you stop rushing to speak, you hear your own reactions more clearly. You notice emotional triggers. You learn patience. This inner listening supports better self-regulation. There will be moments when silence feels awkward. Society often rewards quick responses. Silence may be interpreted as weakness or lack of knowledge. In reality, it reflects confidence and discipline. Those who listen carefully often speak with greater impact. Over time, deep listening changes reputation. People seek your input because they feel understood by you. Leadership emerges naturally from this trust. Influence grows without force. Listening deeply is also a form of respect for truth. Truth rarely appears fully formed in one sentence. It unfolds gradually. Interruptions disrupt this process. Silence protects it. This chapter invites commitment to listening as a daily discipline. It requires practice and patience. The reward is clearer understanding of people and situations. Better decisions follow naturally. By listening deeply before sharing opinions, you reduce conflict, increase wisdom, and strengthen relationships. You move through life with curiosity instead of judgment. This approach builds resilience and calm authority. In a world full of noise, deep listening becomes a quiet advantage. It sharpens perception and softens reaction. It turns conversation into learning and interaction into connection. This practice does not demand perfection. It asks for intention. Each conversation becomes an opportunity to train attention and humility. Over time, this discipline reshapes character. Listening deeply is not passive. It is active presence. It requires energy and focus, but it returns clarity and respect many times over. As this habit strengthens, opinions become fewer but more meaningful. Words carry weight because they are grounded in understanding. Silence before speech becomes natural. This is how listening becomes a path to wisdom and self-improvement. Chapter 30. Pause emotions to choose calm responses during pressure. Pressure does not arrive politely. It shows up uninvited, often when timing is worst, when expectations are high, when eyes are watching, when consequences feel heavy. In those moments, emotions surge before logic has a chance to speak. The heart accelerates, the body tightens, the mind narrows. Most people react from that surge. They speak too fast, decide too quickly, defend too hard, or shut down completely. And later, when the pressure is gone, they wonder why they acted in ways that did not reflect who they truly are. This chapter is about creating a pause inside those moments. Not a pause that avoids reality, but a pause that gives you command over your response. Emotions are not the enemy. They are signals. They carry information about what matters to you, what feels threatened, what feels urgent. The problem begins when emotions take the steering wheel while awareness sits in the back seat. Under pressure, the mind defaults to patterns built long ago. Old habits, old fears, old survival reactions rise automatically. If you do nothing, you will repeat the same response. Chapter 4. Use silence to gather facts and improve decisions. Silence is not emptiness. It is the space where clarity is born and wise decisions quietly take shape. Most people rush to speak because they believe speed equals intelligence and noise equals confidence. In reality, haste often blinds judgment. When pressure, conflict, or opportunity appears, the instinct is to fill the moment with opinions, assumptions, and quick conclusions. Silence feels uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control. Yet that very discomfort is where power begins to grow. When you choose silence, you step out of reaction and into observation. Silence creates distance between what is happening and what you think is happening. That distance matters. Facts rarely announce themselves loudly. They reveal themselves slowly through patterns, tone, timing, and behavior. When you are busy talking, defending, or proving, you miss these signals. Silence sharpens perception. It allows you to notice inconsistencies, emotional undercurrents, and details that rushed minds overlook. This is not passive waiting, it is active awareness. In conversations, silence invites truth to surface. People often reveal more when they are not interrupted. They fill gaps with explanations, clarifications, or unintended disclosures. A calm pause after someone speaks can uncover motivations that words alone cannot hide. This does not require manipulation or strategy. It requires patience and restraint. When you allow silence to exist, Others often rush to escape it, and in doing so, they expose what matters most to them. Decisions made in noise are often driven by incomplete information. Silence gives facts time to assemble. It allows emotions to settle so logic can function properly. When the mind is quiet, it can connect dots more accurately. You begin to separate assumptions from evidence. You distinguish urgency from importance. You recognize which details are essential and which are distractions. This internal quiet is not weakness, it is discipline. Silence also protects you from committing to positions too early. Words create momentum. Once spoken, they pull you forward, even if new information suggests a different direction. By staying silent longer, you preserve flexibility. You give yourself room to adjust as reality unfolds. This adaptability is a strength, especially in complex situations where certainty is an illusion. Many mistakes are not caused by lack of intelligence, but by lack of listening. Listening requires silence. True listening goes beyond hearing words. It involves observing pauses, shifts in tone, and what remains unsaid. When you are silent, you become receptive. You absorb context. You notice power dynamics, emotional states, and hidden constraints. These elements often determine outcomes more than surface-level facts. Silence also reduces the influence of ego. Speaking too soon is often an attempt to assert identity, authority, or superiority. When ego steps aside, curiosity takes its place. Curiosity leads to better questions, and better questions lead to better information. Silence supports this process by keeping the focus on understanding rather than performing. You are no longer trying to appear knowledgeable. You are trying to become informed. In high-stakes moments, silence can slow the pace of events. This slowing is valuable. It allows consequences to be considered before commitments are made. It prevents emotional contagion from spreading. Calm silence can stabilize chaotic environments. Others unconsciously adjust to the tempo you set. When you do not rush, the situation itself often de-escalates, making rational choices easier. Silence also helps you detect internal resistance. When external noise fades, inner signals become clearer. You may notice hesitation, discomfort, or unease that words would have drowned out. These sensations are data. They point to risks, misalignments, or unanswered questions. Ignoring them leads to regret. Honoring them leads to wiser paths. Using silence does not mean withholding forever. It means timing your words intentionally. When you finally speak, your message carries weight because it is grounded in observation rather than impulse. People listen more closely to those who speak less, but with purpose. Your words become tools rather than reflexes. In decision-making, silence allows scenarios to be examined without pressure. You can explore possibilities without committing emotionally to any single outcome. This mental flexibility improves judgment. It prevents tunnel vision. It opens space for creative solutions that rushed thinking would never reach. Silence is especially powerful when facing uncertainty. Instead of forcing conclusions, you allow information to mature. Some answers require time to reveal themselves. Some variables need space to shift. By resisting the urge to finalize too quickly, you align with reality rather than fighting it. Over time, practicing silence changes how you are perceived. You appear thoughtful, grounded, and intentional. Others sense that you are not easily swayed or rushed. This presence builds trust. People feel heard around you because you actually listen. They feel respected because you do not dominate the moment with your voice. Internally, silence builds self-trust. You learn that you do not need to react immediately to remain in control. You discover that clarity often arrives after the initial emotional wave passes. This confidence grows quietly, but it is profound. You become comfortable with pauses, with not knowing, with waiting for facts instead of forcing conclusions. Silence is a skill, not a personality trait. It can be trained. Start by allowing a few seconds before responding. Let conversations breathe. Observe more than you comment. In decisions, step back before stepping forward. Ask yourself what you know for certain and what you are assuming. These small practices compound over time. Ultimately, silence is not about saying nothing. It is about creating the conditions where truth, insight, and wisdom can emerge. When you master silence, you gain access to information others miss. You make decisions that are calmer, clearer, and more aligned with reality. And in a world addicted to noise, that quiet clarity becomes one of your greatest advantages. Chapter 50. Set boundaries by speaking less and observing more. The moment you stop explaining yourself to everyone is the moment your life begins to regain its strength. Boundaries are not built through long speeches or emotional justifications. They are formed through behavior, consistency, and awareness. Many people believe they need to talk more to be understood, but excessive explanation often weakens authority. When you speak less, you create space to see how others behave without your influence. Observation reveals intentions that words try to hide. Talking too much often comes from a desire to be accepted or to avoid conflict. In doing so, people give away information, flexibility, and leverage without realizing it. Silence, on the other hand, holds your position steady. It communicates that your time, energy, and attention are not endlessly available. This quiet restraint signals self-respect long before any boundary is spoken aloud. When you observe more, patterns become clear. You notice who respects your limits without resistance and who pushes when given an opening. You see who listens and who waits only for their turn to speak. These observations guide your decisions better than promises or apologies ever could. Boundaries are easier to maintain when they are based on evidence rather than hope. Speaking less also reduces emotional leakage. Every extra word carries information about your doubts, fears, or desires. Some people unconsciously use this information to test or cross your limits. By keeping your responses measured, you protect your inner world. You do not owe immediate explanations for your choices. You are allowed to decide quietly and act firmly. Boundaries strengthen when they are expressed through action rather than debate. A calm refusal, delivered without excessive detail, leaves little room for negotiation. When you justify too much, you invite others to argue with your reasons instead of respecting your decision. Simplicity closes that door. A clear statement followed by silence reinforces seriousness. Observation also helps you understand your own limits. When you slow down and listen, you notice where resentment begins to form. Resentment is often a signal that a boundary has been crossed internally before it was acknowledged externally. By paying attention to these signals, you can adjust before frustration turns into conflict. Many people mistake silence for weakness. In reality, silence requires confidence. It shows you are not dependent on immediate validation. When you stop reacting to every request or comment, you regain control over your time and emotional energy. Others begin to sense that access to you is earned, not assumed. Boundaries are tested most by those who benefited from the absence of them. When you start speaking less, some people may push harder, fill the silence, or demand explanations. This is where observation becomes essential. How someone responds to your quiet firmness tells you exactly how much respect they have for you. You do not need to confront every test, you simply need to note it. Speaking less also reduces unnecessary conflict. Many arguments escalate because too much is said too quickly. By observing first, you can choose whether a situation requires a response at all. Not every comment deserves your energy. Not every disagreement needs resolution. Selective engagement preserves peace without sacrificing dignity. Silence gives your boundaries time to be felt rather than argued. When you consistently act in alignment with your limits, others adjust. They learn what is acceptable through experience, not explanation. This creates a more stable dynamic because it is grounded in reality rather than negotiation. Observing more also sharpens intuition. When you are not busy preparing your response, you can sense shifts in behavior, tone, and intent. These subtle cues often indicate when a boundary needs reinforcement or when trust is being built. Awareness becomes your guide, reducing the need for reactive defenses. Boundaries are also internal. Speaking less helps you separate your responsibilities from those of others. You stop over-committing. You stop absorbing emotions that are not yours to carry. This internal clarity reflects outwardly. People begin to treat you according to how you treat yourself. Consistency is key. A boundary spoken once but not upheld loses power. When you observe more, you catch moments where alignment slips. You can correct quietly, without drama. Over time, this consistency builds credibility. Your presence alone communicates where the line is drawn. Silence does not mean isolation. It means intentional connection. When you do speak, your words are deliberate and grounded. They come from clarity rather than pressure. This makes your communication more effective and your boundaries more respected. As you practice speaking less and observing more, you will notice a shift in your relationships. Some will deepen, built on mutual respect. Others may fade, unable to function without access to your time or energy. This is not loss, it is refinement. Ultimately, boundaries are an extension of self-awareness. The more you observe, the more accurately you can protect what matters. You do not need to announce your limits loudly. You need to live them quietly. In that quiet consistency, your strength becomes unmistakable. Chapter 6e. Build confidence through measured words and quiet presence. True confidence is felt before it is heard, and it begins the moment you stop trying to prove yourself. Many people believe confidence comes from speaking boldly, dominating conversations, or constantly asserting opinions. In reality, that behavior often hides insecurity. Real confidence does not rush. It does not compete for attention. It settles into a room quietly and lets its presence speak first. When your words are measured and your energy is steady, people sense certainty without being told. Measured words mean you speak with intention rather than impulse. You are not reacting to fill space or defend your image. You are choosing language that reflects clarity. This choice slows you down in a powerful way. It forces you to listen fully before responding. It allows your thoughts to mature before they leave your mouth. Over time, this habit reshapes how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. Quiet presence is not about being invisible. It is about being grounded. When you are comfortable without constant expression, you demonstrate self-assurance. You show that your value does not depend on approval or attention. This calm steadiness draws respect naturally. People lean in when you speak because you do not speak often or carelessly. Confidence built this way is stable because it is internal. It does not rise and fall based on reactions from others. When you measure your words, you reduce regret. You are less likely to overpromise, overshare, or contradict yourself. This consistency builds trust, both outwardly and inwardly. You begin to trust your own judgment because you see its results reflected back to you. Quiet presence also strengthens emotional control. When situations become tense, those who are confident do not escalate. They remain composed. Their tone stays even. Their body language stays open. This composure sends a powerful message: you are not easily shaken. Others may speak louder, but volume does not equal authority. Calmness often carries more weight than force. There is a discipline in choosing not to speak immediately. That discipline trains your mind to tolerate silence without anxiety. Many people rush to talk because silence exposes uncertainty. When you sit comfortably in that silence, you show mastery over yourself. This mastery becomes the foundation of confidence. Measured words also sharpen impact. When every sentence has purpose, people remember what you say. Your voice gains credibility. You do not need to repeat yourself or exaggerate to be heard. Simplicity becomes your strength. Clear statements delivered calmly are difficult to ignore. Quiet presence allows you to observe reactions without being entangled in them. You notice how others respond to your calmness. You see who respects it and who is unsettled by it. This awareness gives you insight into dynamics without confrontation. Confidence grows when you understand situations without being consumed by them. This form of confidence also reduces the need for validation. You stop seeking agreement to feel secure. You become comfortable holding your position, even if it is not immediately supported. This inner stability makes your decisions firmer and your boundaries clearer. You are less likely to be swayed by pressure or emotional manipulation. Speaking less does not mean withholding truth. It means delivering truth with precision. When you do speak, you are present. You are not multitasking emotionally. You are not rehearsing your next line. This presence is felt. People sense when words come from awareness rather than habit. Quiet presence influences how conflicts unfold. Instead of escalating, you de-escalate. Instead of defending, you clarify. This approach shifts the power dynamic. Others often adjust their behavior to match your calm. Confidence expressed through restraint changes the atmosphere without confrontation. Over time, this way of being reshapes your self-image. You begin to see yourself as someone who is thoughtful, composed, and reliable. This self-perception reinforces confidence further. You are no longer chasing certainty, you are living from it. Measured words also protect your energy. Speaking constantly drains focus. Silence preserves it. When your energy is preserved, your presence becomes stronger. People feel it even when you are not speaking. This is the quiet authority that cannot be faked. Confidence grows when actions align with values. By choosing when and how to speak, you act in alignment with intention rather than emotion. This alignment reduces internal conflict. You are no longer torn between what you feel and what you say. This internal coherence is deeply empowering. Quiet presence also teaches patience. You learn that not every moment requires your input. Some situations resolve themselves when given space. Trusting this process builds confidence in life itself. You stop forcing outcomes and start allowing clarity to emerge. As this confidence deepens, you become less reactive to judgment. Criticism loses its sting because your worth is not built on noise. Praise feels lighter because you are not dependent on it. You stand steady regardless of external feedback. Ultimately, confidence through measured words and quiet presence is about self-command. You lead yourself first. You choose restraint over impulse, clarity over volume, awareness over reaction. This choice, repeated daily, transforms how you show up in every area of life. When you walk into a room without needing to announce yourself, when you speak without rushing, when you listen without planning your reply, you embody a confidence that cannot be shaken. And in that calm, deliberate presence, others recognize strength before you ever say a word. Chapter 70. Protect energy by avoiding arguments and needless explanations. Your energy is your most valuable currency, and every unnecessary argument quietly steals it from you. Most arguments do not exist to uncover truth or reach understanding. They exist to defend pride, prove superiority, or release emotional tension. Engaging in them often feels justified in the moment, but the cost appears later as exhaustion, distraction, and regret. When you begin to value your energy, you start to see that winning an argument rarely improves your life, while avoiding one often does. Arguments thrive on reaction. They feed on speed, emotion, and escalation. The fastest way to drain yourself is to respond to every challenge as if it demands a reply. Not every disagreement deserves your participation. Not every opinion requires correction. When you step back, you recognize that many conflicts are invitations to chaos, not opportunities for growth. Needless explanations drain energy in a quieter way. Explaining yourself repeatedly is often a sign that you are trying to be understood by someone who has already decided not to understand. In those moments, more words do not create clarity, they create fatigue. You are not obligated to convince everyone of your intentions, values, or choices. Your life is not a debate. Protecting energy means choosing restraint over reaction. It means recognizing when communication is no longer productive. Once a conversation shifts from curiosity to control, disengagement becomes wisdom. Silence, or a brief acknowledgement, preserves strength that arguing would destroy. Many people argue because they fear being misjudged. They believe that if they do not defend themselves, false narratives will take hold. In reality, those committed to misunderstanding you will do so regardless of your explanations. Your consistency over time speaks louder than any defense. Energy spent on living well yields better results than energy spent on justification. Avoiding arguments does not mean avoiding truth. It means choosing the right conditions for truth to land. Truth delivered into a closed mind becomes friction. Withholding engagement in such moments is not avoidance, it is strategy. You conserve energy for conversations where growth is possible. Arguments also narrow perspective. As emotions rise, listening declines. The body enters a defensive state and reasoning suffers. Even if you have valid points, they become lost in the noise. Walking away keeps your mind clear and your emotional balance intact. That clarity benefits every area of your life. Needless explanations often stem from guilt or over-responsibility. You may feel compelled to justify boundaries, decisions, or changes to avoid disappointing others. This habit slowly erodes self-trust. Each unnecessary explanation teaches you to doubt your right to choose. Protecting energy means honoring your decisions without apology. There is strength in brevity. A short response delivered calmly communicates finality. It closes loops rather than opening them. When you explain less, people learn that your choices are not negotiable. This reduces future challenges and preserves energy over time. Arguments also create emotional residue. Even after they end, the mind replays them. This mental noise steals focus and peace. By avoiding engagement, you prevent this residue from forming. Your attention stays available for creativity, problem-solving, and rest. Protecting energy requires discernment. Some discussions are worth having. They involve mutual respect, openness, and shared goals. Others are traps disguised as dialogue. Learning to tell the difference saves enormous effort. The key indicator is whether both parties are willing to listen. Without that willingness, silence becomes the healthiest response. When you stop explaining yourself excessively, you reclaim time. Time that can be invested in growth, relationships that nourish you, or simply recovery. Energy preserved is energy redirected. It strengthens resilience and improves decision-making. People may initially resist your change. Those accustomed to your availability may push harder. This is temporary. Over time, they adjust. Your calm non-engagement teaches others how to treat you. It sets a standard without confrontation. Avoiding arguments also deepens emotional intelligence. You learn to manage impulses rather than obey them. You recognize triggers without acting on them. This self-mastery builds confidence and stability. Energy is no longer scattered across conflicts. It is centered within you. Needless explanations often blur boundaries. Each justification invites negotiation. Each defense opens a door. By closing that door gently but firmly, you simplify interactions. Life becomes less noisy. Decisions become cleaner. Protecting energy is an act of self-respect. It acknowledges that your well-being matters. You are not required to participate in every disagreement or clarify every assumption. Choosing peace is not weakness. It is wisdom earned through awareness. As you practice this, you will notice a shift in how you feel. Less tension, less fatigue, more clarity, more presence. Your days become lighter because your energy is no longer entangled in battles that lead nowhere. Ultimately, avoiding arguments and needless explanations is about choosing what truly deserves your attention. When you guard your energy, you guard your future. And in that protection, you create space for calm, focus, and a life directed by intention rather than reaction. Chapter 8: Respond with purpose after reflection rather than instant reaction. The most powerful response is never immediate. It is measured, deliberate, and forged through reflection. Instant reactions feel necessary because life often pressures us to move quickly. Words fly, emotions spike, and decisions demand attention. Yet the fastest choice is rarely the wisest. Reacting immediately allows impulses to dominate. It prioritizes speed over clarity, volume over substance, and instinct over insight. Reflection, even for a brief moment, transforms this process entirely. It replaces reflex with reason, confusion with strategy, and regret with intention. Reflection begins by noticing your own emotional state. Every reaction carries a layer of feeling: anger, frustration, fear, excitement. These emotions are valid, but they are not instructions. When you pause, you observe these currents rather than letting them sweep you away. You create a space where clarity can emerge, where your response can align with purpose rather than impulse. Immediate responses often escalate conflicts or amplify mistakes. They amplify the loudest voices within, including ego, pride, and defensiveness. By reflecting, you gain perspective. You consider the context, potential outcomes, and the values you wish to uphold. This pause does not delay action unnecessarily. It improves the quality of action. Reflection also allows you to separate fact from interpretation. In heated moments, the mind is prone to assumptions, exaggerations, and projections. Instant reaction often acts on these distorted perceptions, producing results that feel justified in the moment, but disastrous in hindsight. Taking time to think ensures that your response is based on reality rather than perception. Purposeful response requires consideration of long-term consequences. Immediate reactions chase short-term relief or validation. Thoughtful responses anticipate how the outcome will affect relationships, opportunities, and your personal integrity. They ask not only, "What do I feel?" but, "What action reflects who I want to be?" This alignment transforms ordinary interactions into expressions of self-mastery. Observation during reflection is critical. Listening, not just to words but to tone, pauses, and underlying intentions, provides insight that immediate reaction misses. Reflection is not passive, it is active gathering of information. It equips you with understanding before engagement, making your response more effective and precise. When you respond with purpose, words carry weight because they are intentional. They are chosen carefully to communicate meaning rather than to fill silence or release emotion. People notice the difference. Your voice gains credibility and your presence gains authority. Others unconsciously adjust to your measured pace, creating space for rational dialogue rather than reactive chaos. Reflection also develops emotional resilience. The moments between stimulus and response become training grounds. Each pause reinforces the ability to tolerate tension without acting destructively. Over time, you grow comfortable with discomfort, recognizing that clarity and composure are more valuable than immediate expression. Immediate reactions often carry regret, especially when fueled by anger or defensiveness. Reflection reduces this risk. By evaluating options, assessing timing, and considering tone, you minimize the chance of saying or doing something counterproductive. Your actions increasingly mirror your best judgment rather than your fleeting impulses. Reflection before action enhances relationships. When you respond thoughtfully, others feel heard and respected. Conflicts are addressed constructively, and misunderstandings are clarified calmly. People instinctively respond better to those who maintain composure because it signals reliability and intelligence. Purposeful responses also build personal authority. Your consistency in acting after reflection communicates stability. Decisions become predictable in the best sense. They are grounded, fair, and aligned with principles rather than whims. Authority arises naturally when others recognize that your actions are intentional rather than reactive. The habit of reflection creates an inner dialogue that guides action, asking simple questions, "What matters most here?" or "Which option reflects my values?" replaces chaotic impulses with structured reasoning. Over time, this dialogue becomes automatic, allowing swift yet deliberate responses that feel natural. Reflection is not avoidance. It is engagement with awareness. Waiting to respond is not passive resignation. It is strategic preparation. You honor the complexity of the situation instead of oversimplifying it for the sake of speed. This approach often leads to solutions that would have been invisible in the heat of instant reaction. Even in high-pressure scenarios, a brief pause makes a difference. A few seconds of thought, a controlled breath, or a moment to review options dramatically shifts outcomes. These small intervals create a foundation for action that is calculated rather than impulsive, deliberate rather than reactionary. Purposeful response requires humility as well. You acknowledge that your first impulse is not necessarily correct. You recognize the value of pausing to gather insight, and you accept that wisdom often arrives slower than emotion. This humility reinforces careful observation and careful choice. Reflection before responding also strengthens confidence. When you act intentionally, you trust your judgment. You rely less on immediate validation from others and more on your own assessment. This internal assurance reduces the need to over-explain or over-defend your decisions, further conserving energy. The ability to respond after reflection transforms challenges into opportunities. Difficult conversations become arenas for clarity and understanding. High-stakes decisions become exercises in strategic thinking. Even emotionally charged situations can be navigated with composure and effectiveness. Eventually, responding with purpose reshapes your identity. You become known for poise, insight, and reliability. Others look to you for guidance, not because you dominate discussions, but because you choose your words and actions deliberately. Your influence grows silently but powerfully. Reflection also fosters creativity. When you resist immediate reaction, your mind can explore alternative solutions. You see angles and outcomes that impulsive responses would overlook. The pause provides room for imagination and innovation, transforming challenges into opportunities for growth. Ultimately, choosing to respond after reflection rather than reaction is a declaration of self-mastery. It is a commitment to act with intention, to honor principles over impulses, and to lead through thoughtful presence. Each measured response reinforces control, clarity, and purpose, shaping not just moments but the trajectory of your life. When practiced consistently, this approach creates a life where actions are deliberate, words are precise, and presence carries authority without force. You move through challenges not as a reactive participant, but as a conscious architect of outcomes, and in that space, real power resides. Chapter 9Z: Strengthen leadership by listening first and speaking last. True leadership is not proven by how loudly you speak, but by how attentively you listen. Most people assume leaders lead through words, through directives, or through constant visibility. The reality is far different. The most effective leaders create influence by first understanding, by observing, and by absorbing more than they express. Listening is the cornerstone of insight. When you listen before speaking, you access information that others are often unaware they are giving away. You discover motivations, concerns, and opportunities that only become visible when attention is fully applied. Listening first means resisting the urge to dominate conversations. Many people speak quickly to assert authority, to be seen as knowledgeable, or to guide outcomes prematurely. Yet, when a leader pauses to listen, they communicate respect and patience. Listening signals that the perspectives of others matter, that their voices are valued, and that the leader does not need to rush to prove themselves. This quiet presence builds trust naturally. Leaders who speak last have the advantage of perspective. After absorbing input, observing dynamics, and considering implications, they can respond with insight rather than instinct. Their words carry weight because they are informed, deliberate, and intentional. Speaking last ensures that communication is not reactive but strategic. The audience notices the difference between someone who reacts and someone who responds with purpose. Listening cultivates empathy. Understanding the underlying emotions and concerns behind words allows leaders to address needs more effectively. When you hear not only what is said but also what is left unsaid, you gain a fuller picture. Decisions become more precise, strategies more aligned, and guidance more impactful. Empathy born from attentive listening strengthens loyalty and cooperation in ways commands cannot achieve. Patience is a critical component of this approach. Leaders often face pressure to act quickly, to resolve conflict immediately, or to provide instant direction. Choosing to listen first requires discipline. It is a conscious choice to gather all relevant information before committing to action. This patience protects both judgment and credibility, ensuring that decisions are neither impulsive nor misinformed. Speaking last is not about silence for its own sake. It is about timing. It is about ensuring that when words are delivered, they are informed, clear, and purposeful. The leader's voice becomes a tool of guidance rather than a reflexive reaction. Others naturally gravitate toward guidance that feels considered rather than imposed. Influence grows quietly, but it grows deeply. Observing during conversations enhances awareness of dynamics. Tone, body language, hesitation, and repetition all convey meaning. Leaders who listen first pick up on patterns of behavior, unspoken tensions, and areas of opportunity that would be missed if speaking dominated the interaction. The decision to remain quiet allows space for clarity to emerge both in others and within the leader themselves. Effective leaders resist the temptation to fill gaps with immediate solutions. Quick responses often mask uncertainty or fear of appearing indecisive. By waiting, leaders demonstrate confidence in their ability to process information and respond appropriately. This restraint communicates authority in ways that immediate speech cannot replicate. Listening first also improves problem solving. When a leader absorbs ideas, perspectives, and concerns, they can integrate this input into solutions that are not only more accurate, but more widely accepted. Solutions that emerge from observation rather than assertion are less likely to face resistance. This approach ensures that outcomes are durable, not just expedient. Leaders who speak last reduce conflict naturally. When initial impulses are withheld, misunderstandings have space to clarify. Misinterpretations become apparent before being escalated. By listening first, the leader becomes the stabilizing force in discussions, guiding dialogue rather than fueling tension. This composure is a silent form of influence that is often more effective than overt authority. The act of listening before speaking builds credibility. Colleagues and team members recognize that guidance is based on understanding, not assumption. Words are no longer hollow instructions, they are conclusions drawn from careful observation. People begin to trust the judgment of leaders who consistently demonstrate this pattern. Listening also cultivates humility. Leaders acknowledge that they do not have all the answers immediately. They recognize the value of collective insight. This humility enhances engagement, encourages collaboration, and fosters environments where diverse perspectives are shared openly. Leadership becomes less about asserting dominance and more about facilitating growth. Speaking last amplifies impact. When words are finally offered, they are sharper, more precise, and more influential. Others naturally pay attention because the message is perceived as the result of thoughtful consideration rather than impulse. This creates a culture where input is respected and reflection is valued, strengthening both the leader and the team. Leaders who adopt this approach develop a heightened sense of timing. They learn when to intervene and when to let processes unfold naturally. This discernment reduces unnecessary friction, ensures focus remains on priorities, and demonstrates mastery over both self and environment. Listening first strengthens emotional intelligence. Leaders perceive the emotional climate accurately before contributing. This awareness allows interventions to be more nuanced and effective. Words spoken with emotional insight are far more persuasive than words delivered without understanding. Over time, consistently listening before speaking reshapes relationships. Team members feel valued, respected, and heard. Decisions are met with acceptance rather than resistance. Engagement grows because people recognize that their leader acts with both awareness and intention. Influence becomes seamless because authority is earned through presence and understanding, not through volume or urgency. This practice also fortifies personal resilience. Leaders who listen first are less vulnerable to manipulation, provocation, or misinformation. They assess situations with a clear mind, not a reactive one. By speaking last, they maintain control over narrative, tone, and